Nancy Pelosi has announced what her biggest priority is, what her first bill will be in the 117th Congress. It'll be H.R. 1 because they start over with the numbers every time. It's all about election fraud and encouraging it. Yes, they call it election reform, but when we go through the bill, you'll see that it's not really reform because it doesn't make anything better. It makes things much worse. They titled it the For the People Act. And like so many of these bill titles, it does the very opposite of what it claims. It should be the For the Democrat Politicians Act. And like I said, this is H.R. 1. This is the first thing. This is what she wants you to remember. This is the thing that they're most proud of. Back when the Republicans had the House like the last time, their H.R. 1 was about tax cuts, because they thought that's what the people wanted to see and hear about, and that's what they were proud of. Not Nancy Pelosi. She's like, no, election fraud. Yeah, that's what we need to do. Seriously. This bill mandates that millions of taxpayer dollars, that's your money, be given to candidates before they're even elected, in order to run their campaigns. Basically, it would require us to fund the candidates that we oppose with our tax money. Literally doing the very opposite, I guess you could say, of that Republican bill, their H.R. 1. This one would take your money and give it to themselves, to the political class, as if we need more politicians. That's just what our society needs. You know, more funding of politicians. You could get rich by running. Maybe we all should, if this were to pass. Back in 2019, the last time this bill was introduced, it failed, of course, but Republican Kevin McCarthy was criticizing it, and he said, quote, "This bill will give candidates a government match of 6-1. Not a dollar for dollar. No. For the Politicians Act multiplies it. So if a citizen gives $200, the government gives $1,200. That's why the New Democrat Socialist Party are so excited about this bill," unquote. Yeah, I think if this does pass, we'll all have to run. We're all going to have campaigns that are, I think, maximally offensive. And I say that because you're going to have these far leftists, right? The AOC types, you might say, that we'll end up having to fund with our tax money. I find that egregious. So we'll have to kind of match it, but on the opposite side. We'll have to have our own really offensive campaigns that they're going to have to fund. And by the way, there are so many variations of Make America blank again. We could be so triggering, and we should. If this passes, we'll have a lot of fun. That's all I'm promising. We'll have fun. Okay, moving further down this bill, though, it also forces states to require all convicted felons to be able to vote. So this is actually, okay, there's the felon issue, but there's also the fact that this is a states' rights issue. Because up until now, it's the states that have determined their voting regulations and how it's done, and who can vote, such as felons or non-felons, etc. But this is a federal power grab. Nancy Pelosi and her ilk want to take that control away from the states and give it to the federal government so she can write the rules, basically, and change the rules depending upon, what gets most Democrats voting, because most felons, are Democrats. You can read into that what you like, right? But also, this bill would require that all states allow same-day voter registration, which leads to increased voter fraud. Again, it's called an election reform bill, but is it really reform if it's not improving things but making fraud more likely? I guess from her perspective, that's reform because it improves things for her. But it also would prevent states from limiting early voting. So say that a state wanted to simplify the voting process. And so let's get rid of these mail-in votes, get rid of early votes. Let's make this as simple as possible and as fair as possible. We'll have the least amount of tampering. Everybody can come in on the same day. They can all vote, and then we'll count that evening and release the results, like a real free and fair election. Let's say a state wanted to do that. This federal bill would prevent it and say, no, you have to have the cumbersome, confusing, and likely to result in fraud, early voting system. And by the way, if a person can't plan for, voting on election day, if they care so little, then should they really be voting at all? If the only voting day is voting day, and they just can't make it, can't be bothered, should that person really be voting? And this argument goes also for mail-in voting. It's the same thing with a few exceptions like the military, etc. But that's about it. And this bill also, by the way, would prevent states from limiting mail-in voting. They want to make sure that the 2020 election is repeated, and perhaps worse next time, because all the states will be doing all the crap. It would also require that all states provide free absentee mail-in ballots and free postage. Because you know why people aren't voting? It's because of that, 44-cent stamp? That's the reason. I mean, it's so ridiculous. Like, the whole argument is ridiculous. But this bill does betray one truth, and that is that they always wanted mail-in ballots. Remember, this bill was also introduced in 2019, before the virus. But this virus has been an excuse to allow them to do what they wanted all along, to obfuscate the whole election process, to have all these different mail-in ballots. They claim now that it's because of the virus, but the virus is just the excuse. They always wanted as much early voting as possible, as much mail-in ballots as possible, these pre-filled in halfway ballots, they want that. They want no voter ID. This entire election reform bill doesn't have anything about voter ID. Nothing. Is that unbelievable? And of course, these are the same people who want high school kids voting. Why do they want high school kids and felons voting so badly? They want the least educated, the most ignorant, the most easily manipulated, or manipulatable, voting. That's what they want, because that's who votes for Democrats. And like I said, this bill was first introduced in 2019. It passed the House, but failed in the Republican-controlled Senate, as it should have, and as hopefully it will again. But notice here, the very first thing they want to do, when they get just a snippet of power, the first thing they want to do is make sure Republicans can't win anymore. That's how do they really feel about free and fair elections. Next time you hear some mainstream media pundit going about free and fair elections, remember this bill, which is there to do the opposite, and it's their biggest priority. It's H.R. 1. Wait, if you enjoyed that video, please remember to like and share. I can't grow without you. Also, if you want to be reliably notified of new videos, don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter. If you're able to support the production of these videos, I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe at Subscribestar, or maybe get one of the healthier products, or even get some merch.